So I'm filming this video on October 8th. It's a Saturday night, and as of yesterday, October 7th, marks it's been 9 years since I uploaded my very first YouTube video, Scary Insect. Oh my gosh, the fact I've been making videos for like the past like since I was a freshman in high school, it's crazy to me. And Wednesday was my birthday, this year, and this past Sunday was the conclusion of my internship here in Colorado Springs. It's been a hell of a week. And if you've seen the capstone video that I uploaded last night for, my zoo internship here in Colorado Springs, you probably know that. But this is a movie review that I've been putting off for 2 weeks now because when Avatar was announced to be re-released in IMAX 3D, a remastered version of the film, I was initially a little disappointed they didn't remaster like the extended version of James Cameron's masterpiece. Instead, they remastered the theatrical version. But when I saw the trailers, just how stunning the remastered looked, and keeping in mind I didn't get a chance to see it in 3D when it came out in theaters back in 2009, and when I heard there was going to be exclusive footage for the sequel, Way of Water, which comes out in December, I got really excited. So yeah, I figured to celebrate 9 years of my YouTube channel, let's redo a classic movie review. Way back in 2014, right after my sister graduated high school, we had a video together, basically ranking our top 5 favorite movies of all time. Avatar was my third. Avatar is my third favorite movie of all time, and I stand by my unpopular, 15-year-old me's opinion on this film. It's my third favorite movie of all time. Second being Jurassic Park, and the first being the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I like to compile the Lord of the Rings movies just together in the same movie in 3 separate chapters, but that's not the point. I don't care how much backlash Avatar's received over the years, or how over people say it is, or all the plagiarism accusations, oh, it's blue Pocahontas, dances the Smurfs, Ferngully in space. I don't care. James Cameron, the guy, I've heard he's really difficult to work with on set, but as a filmmaker, he's one of my all-time favorites. And yeah, this review is not even gonna be like a review. It's gonna be kind of like a love letter to just one of my all-time favorite movies, because I have Avatar and Jurassic Park and Star Wars and other sci-fi classics to thank for inspiring me to pursue a writing career, because my major at CSU, I graduated from university last year, was English with a concentration in creative writing. And as is the case with all of my classic movie reviews, this review is going to be super spoiler heavy. And well, hey, you've had almost 13 years to watch this movie, and it was just re-released for 2 weeks in a remastered format in IMAX 3D. So if you haven't seen Avatar yet, that's on you. Here's your warning right now. This review will contain plenty of spoilers, both for the theatrical version of the film, the extended version of the film, the one little scene they added near the end of the remastered version that came out 2 weeks ago. And I'm also going to talk a lot about the various deleted scenes, as well as the exclusive footage that we got for Way of the Water during the post-credits of the remastered version of Avatar. Also, I never write scripts for my movie reviews, but I did make a little list of bullet points in my notebook right here for things I want to discuss. So, without further ado, let's begin. Almost 13 years later, this film is still just drop dead gorgeous. Visually speaking, the CGI, this film came out back in 2009. It has better CGI than some movies I've seen today. And like I said, I didn't get the chance to see Avatar in 3D when it was first released. I remember seeing this movie with my mom back in theaters when I was a preteen, and at the time 3D movies just gave me really bad headaches. Same thing with my mother, so we decided to just see it in 2D. But all my friends at the end of elementary school at the time were raving about how the 3D was just so amazing. And Avatar in the back of my head was kind of oh, darn it. I got this movie on DVD as a birthday present a year later, and I've rewatched it, as you guys can probably tell, God knows how many times over the years. But yeah, when it was when remastered in IMAX 3D, it was finally my chance to see it in 3D, and I took my roommates to see it. And yeah, it was just honestly, seeing it on the IMAX 3D remastered back, it was just as magical this time as it was the first time I watched it way back almost 13 years ago. There's so many little details that I never noticed in the original cut, thanks to the remaster. So many visuals, so many little details just popped at me, whether it's with the CGI, with the characters, the clothes that they were wearing, or with the computers the RDA was using to map out Pandora. Everything was just amazing. And especially the special footage we got of Way of Water during the the credits, like, guys, I thought that Disney's Moana had really impressive water animation, for the whole ocean setting. Yeah, like, Way of Water, it's gonna blow Moana out of the water, which I know might not be the most fair comparison because one is a legitimately like animated film and the other isn't. But this film, like Way of the Water, just already reminds me of Moana with just how gorgeous the marine life in Pandora looks. Like I want to just reach out and touch the screen and splash and play with the Na'vi, and oh my goodness, Way of the Water is going to be yet another film that's going to make you want to learn American Sign Language, because the Metakaina, the ocean-dwelling Na'vi tribes people, when they swim underwater, they communicate through like sign language, and even like their tails are thicker, more rudder-like to help them swim through the water. And then the Omataka people of the forest, which I thought was a really cool remark. And yeah, the sound effects and the score from James Horner, one of my all-time favorite composers, may he rest in peace. Yeah, the Avatar soundtrack is one of my favorite movie soundtracks of all time. It brought the world to life even more, like with the more epic scales, when Jake meets the Na'vi for the first time. They take him to the village, and like you get a low angle shot of Home Tree, and that like ba 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 ba, it's like I have goosebumps. And like especially the battle scenes when the score kicks in, when there's like sadder moments, like when Home Tree is destroyed and like Etu Khan dies right in front of Neytiri, or when like Neytiri is, her Ikran says that it's shot down by Ween Fleet, who, for the sake of this review, I'm just gonna call him Private Pancake because of the way he dies at the end of the film. So the Hammerhead Titanosaurs splatting him during the whole Iowa Serju scene. Yeah, like the score makes you like. I feel like every time I've watched Avatar, when it was my first time watching it, to the remaster, to all the times I've watched on DVD in between then, I just feel like I'm there in Pandora. James Cameron started working on Avatar way back in 1995, and he, again, like I said, he's notoriously difficult to work with on set, but he's very patient, and he's a notorious perfectionist. He didn't think that he had the technology to make such a huge CGI extravagant film back then, but when he saw like Return of the King and King Kong, if I've read this correctly, he saw Return of the King and King Kong, he knew the technologies there, and immediately just got to work on Avatar and started developing the language in 2005. I can forgive the studio for delaying Way of Water for as long as they did, because they just like, this is a legendary director we're talking about here. Just let him do what he wants, let him take as much time as he needs. I would much rather have the film be delayed multiple times for like the best final product we can finally have, than have it just be rushed and just like shot out in theaters and have it not be as satisfying. Because the motion capture performances for all the Na'vi characters are just, oh my gosh, I could gush about. I could make this entire review just gushing about Zoe Saldana as Neytiri. She's my second favorite motion capture performance of all time, first being Andy Serkis's Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Like, so much of this film, like the Na'vi, the culture, and the way they talk, the way they move, because Saldana has said, like, oh, it's very difficult to speak English in a Na'vi accent. Yeah, most of the language was burned onto her shoulders, and she just delivered it in just the best way she possibly could. I have to take off my jacket because my room is getting all hot and sweaty. But yeah, like, Pandora as a world, as a fictitious moon in the whole Alpha Centauri, like, star system, is, like, Middle Earth level in terms of, like, lore and just backstory with, like, the Na'vi and their cultures and their language and the different locations around the world. Like, there's an entire, like, Avatar Wikipedia. This movie took out so much of its own lore that kind of irks me, because, like, before the last fight scene in the movie, Jake tells Trudy and Norm, like, hey, I have 15 clans out there. That's over 2,000 warriors. So we're introduced to the Omataka clan of the forest, the Horse clan of the plains, and the Ikran people of the Eastern Sea. That's 3, and there's clans right there, and there's 12 more clans that we didn't really get formally introduced in the movie. Like, 11-year-old me was really just like, I want to meet all the Na'vi clans, man. And I've always just adored the biodiversity on Pandora, the flora and the geography and the fauna. Like, my major at CSU was English, my minor was zoology, so I've always just been really fascinated with all the animals on Pandora and their ecosystem. Like, you get a really great sense of who's predator and who's prey. There's the Thanator, the viper wolves, the econs, the great Leonopteryx, and there's the herbivores like the hammerhead titanotheres, the stern beast. So the stern beast only appear in the extended version, which is understandable because all the scenes that they're in don't really add too much to the story. But that one, the hunting scene when like all the Na'vi, after Jake tames his econ, they're all just like hunting the stern beasts. That scene was really cool. And the dire horses, and of course all the incredible looking sea creatures that we're going to see in Way of Water this December. Yeah, just like I just love all the animals in Pandora. And when Jake tames his econ in that scene, like I always thought it was really funny how like Neytiri was like, oh, he must choose you, he must also choose him. How I know if he chooses me, he will try to kill you. Outstanding. Like this film had really great moments of comic relief like that. And when Jake tames his econ with the Sahelu, it's like his turning point into truly knowing where his heart lies and knowing that I'm not just following, I'm like, hey, at first I know I'm following orders, I gotta like get the Omatakaya people out of their home, but like that's when that's when he really changes sides, is when he has this econ, because the econs, they only have one rider their entire life, and that's when he decides. I think, at least, I'm not the only one to say this, so I don't take like any credit for this. I think that's his turning point from like going from RDA to just like Na'vi, not mating with Neytiri at the Tree of Voices, but it's this, because he even like references the taming the econ when he like hooks up with Neytiri. He's just like, oh, I've already chosen, but this woman must also choose me. All the animals just feel like characters of their own in this film. And I know people like, obviously me, being the zoology guy that I am, I've heard all kinds of people discuss like, how the Na'vi are just so much different from the other creatures on Pandora. Some people have even theorized that the Na'vi aren't even native to Pandora, like came over from another planet. And how they're just like, they're so different because all the animals, even the Prolemurus that you see briefly at the start of the film when like they take the helicopter and Jake steps outside and sees Pandora for the first time, even they have 6 limbs while a Na'vi only have 4 limbs, and a Na'vi don't have that like operculum thingy that like helps them breathe. Like you see that in dire horses and econs and the stern beasts and the Thanator, where like they have that like little open passageway that air gets to and from. Yeah, the Na'vi are just so different, and people have kind of criticized Avatar for making the Na'vi too similar to humans, because I've heard some people say like, hey, the fact that the Na'vi are just humanoid and they're from such a distant planet from ours, and like they have so many similarities to us, is just very unrealistic. Because if there were to be like a legit race of like highly intelligent extraterrestrial like beings, they'd be completely different from us, which I don't disagree with necessarily. Like I think it's definitely, that would probably likely be the case if we were to like actually discover like a race of alien people from a far distant galaxy. But at the same time, I don't think it's super far-fetched for like an alien race that were to be real to be humanoid like us. The filmmakers, they wanted to make the Na'vi relatable to us, the audience. Like, how would you like it if Jake Sully fell in love with like a giant purple nine-eyed slug monster with like lobster claws and had like multiple like elephant trunks for its mouth? And second of all, the Na'vi, they're not like too similar to us. They're 10 feet tall because there's lower gravity on Pandora, so everything just weighs less. Therefore, all the creatures, be it the Na'vi, the animals, or the plants, and all the mountains and trees, can grow to ridiculous heights. Yeah, they're 10 feet tall. They have blue skin. They have large yellow eyes. They have 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5 like ours. And they have tails. And even like this detail is very difficult to notice, but they also have 4 toes in each foot, not like us who have 5 toes in each foot. And I don't think it's too, like, again, the reason why I don't think it's that far-fetched for like another race to have similarities to us, that fact that the humans in the movie just have so much in common with the Na'vi, I would argue is an example of convergent evolution, which for those of you who don't know, like convergent evolution is when species or groups of animals that are not closely related develop similar characteristics. We've seen this like all the time, like throughout like the Paleozoic era, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic era leading up to today, all across the animal kingdom. There's dolphins, from modern times, and there's ichthyosaurs, the Mesozoic era, they one group of animals is a reptile, the other group of animals is a mammal, and they have very similar body designs. They have similar lifestyles. They're both like native to the oceans, and they have large eyes, large brains, and they're viviparous, which means they give birth. They have live birth. And the fact that dolphins and ichthyosaurs can have so much in common, despite being from two different classes, from two like millions of years apart, geologically speaking, I don't think it would be too strange for humans to have a lot in common with an alien race from a far distant planet. Because look at all the characteristics that we have that have like given us so many advantages over all the other animals on this planet. Like, yeah, a tiger or a lion or a wolf or a bear or heck, even a crocodile or shark could easily defeat us in a raw fist fight. But we have so many advantages over those animals. Like, we're bipedal, we have forward-facing eyes, we have large brains, we have hands and opposable thumbs, and we have just like such a higher sense of intellect and self-awareness and a moral compass that really sets us apart from other species. All those like characteristics have given us a massive advantage over, all the animals on this planet. So again, I feel like an alien, if like a highly intelligent, like sentient alien race were to exist, they would have to develop similar characteristics to those to rise above all the other creatures in their respective world. So yes, the whole world of Avatar is just so enthralling, not just Pandora, but Earth itself, because you're set in the year 2154, and anyone who has not done so already, I highly recommend that you watch the extended version. Even if you are one of those like Avatar haters who just like hates the theatrical version of Avatar, I would suggest giving the extended version a watch, because the extended version opens with Jake Sully being on Earth, and you see just like how much of a mess that the world is in at this point in time. You see Jake in his apartment, and it's just like a mess. Like, he's cramped, it's overpopulated, and everyone's wearing masks because the air is not safe to breathe. I think it's cool that everyone's wearing masks in the extended version, because it's like as if James Cameron knew about the global pandemic that we would be thrown into in real life, like 11 years later. That was funny. And how like he's a paraplegic, and he's out of the army, and he sees a woman being abused by her husband or boyfriend at the bar, and Jake, being the good person that he is, even though he's paraplegic, puts the guy in his place, starts beating him up, and the bar staff just throws him out and throws his wheelchair at him, and life just sucks, and you really feel sorry for him. He even says, like, in his narration, like, all I've ever wanted in my sorry ass life was a thing worth fighting for. When he gets the news of his brother Tommy passing away, they hand him over his contract, say like he's the only person who can, being Tommy's identical twin brother, who can link up with his avatar in Pandora. It's like, hey, this world's gonna be a fresh new start. It just scenes like that really make me wish that the extended version of Avatar was the theatrical version, because the theatrical version is 2 hours and 42 minutes long. It starts with like they're immediately in space, and Jake gets out of cryo sleep, but it's like it's just like shut in there. We have very little he does say at the end of the movie when like he's praying to Awa, the tree of souls, be like, hey, if grace is with you, look into her memories, see the world we come from, there's no green there. But it would have been great to actually see the world that they came from, and just how much of a mess that Earth is in, with the whole like energy crisis and the war and the famine and the overpopulation. The extended version is 2 hours and 58 minutes. It only has 16 extra minutes of footage, and there's like 30 to 40 more minutes of deleted scenes that I just left out completely in both versions. They didn't finish the deleted scenes because they didn't have the money or time for it. They cut out mostly complete footage purely just for the sake of the film's runtime. But James Cameron also directed Titanic back in 1997, which was the highest grossing movie of all time at in 1997, until it was dethroned by Avatar in 2009. So that Titanic is 3 hours and 15 minutes, and people back in the late 90s were okay with that. So I don't see what the big deal would have been if Avatar was that same runtime as well. In the extended version, they go to what's left of Grace Augustine's school, where they taught the Na'vi kids how to speak English. And later in the extended version, there's this one scene where it's before the whole montage of Jake, like learning the Navi and their ways, like where they're in the bunker and they're sort of like bickering, and like Jake finally asks like, "Hey, what happened to your school?" And it's when Grace, explains like what happened to Neytiri's older sister Saiwanen, who was she and the other young hunters. They were really angry about all the clear cutting the RDA was doing, so they set a bulldozer on fire, and the RDA soldiers chase her into back to the village, and they go to the school thinking that like Grace can defend them, and they just like gun down Saiwanen right in front of Neytiri, and thus the school is like no more, and the all the avatars are banned from the village, and they haven't really been able to speak to the Navi for years. Ugh, I wish that scene was kept in the theatrical cut because it would have made so much more sense. Saiwanen, being Neytiri's older sister, was supposed to be like the Sahik, the clan's spiritual leader, but of course she died, so naturally that role was just kind of forced upon by Neytiri, and thus she had to mate with Sute, because they were becoming made a pair because Sute was to become the next clan leader. But that's not really by choice, like it's all arranged. So I think that makes Neytiri like falling in love with Jake and mating with him instead of Sute more understandable. I also think how the extended version like showcases like Sute's dying wish for Jake at the end of the movie, when he's when he falls off of the Valkyrie ship and like he's on the ground bleeding out. And again, Private Pancake in the original script even finds Sute bleeding out on the forest floor and cuts off his hairpiece just to leave Sute dying, like laying there in agony. If they kept that detail into the final cut, it would have made it all more satisfying when the Hammerhead Titanosphere puts him in his place during the AOI search you've seen. I'm a little embarrassed as to like how much reading into and like viewing of the extended version, like the deleted scenes I've done for this movie, but can you blame me? Like I would personally, I would eat up a like 4-hour director's cut of Avatar with all deleted scenes finished, because again, this movie is just one of my all-time favorites. There's just so many like really cool deleted scenes that give the narrative just more flow and more nuance, and also add a lot more development to various characters, especially for Selfridge and Trudy and Norm and Max. I understand wanting to leave some deleted scenes out just for the sake of runtime, but there's 3 deleted scenes in particular that I really wish they kept in the film's final cut. First one being Jake and Norm. You saw this in the theatrical version. Jake and Norm didn't really get along at first. Norm was just being really snarky and just giving him an attitude, because clearly Norm is jealous because, Jake just was chosen by the Omatakaya to like be, sort of the ambassador of like, hopefully the two like groups of people can have peace, while Jake was just this dumb grunt thrown onto this mission because his brother died and he was the only one who could take his place, while Norm actually spent years training for this mission. He speaks language fluently. There's one deleted scene though that, again, I can see why they cut it, because they want to keep the movie, they wanted to keep this movie PG-13, but like Norm has sex with Trudy, and I was like laughing hysterically when I first watched that scene, because again, I've watched Avatar so many times on DVD over the years, but I didn't watch that deleted scene for the first time until like 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, Nudie is the ship I never thought I needed until now. And it's like, yep. Then Jake immediately cuts away saying, "Oh, Norm's attitude has improved lately," because like, in the movies, like all of a sudden Norm is just suddenly friendlier and just happier to be around Jake. But if they kept that scene in, they kept like Norm and Trudy's relationship and romance in, not only would have made Norm's like attitude towards Jake improving more understandable, but also would have given Trudy more of a backstory too, or it makes her decision to like be disgusted by Quaritch and his brutality and just desert her post and fight the RDA and join the Navi's rebellion more understandable, because hey, she fell in love with a scientist. And knowing that, like, even in the original script, her last words before Quaritch blows her up in the movie, her last words were, "I love you, Norm." Like, oh, that's sweet. And the second lead scene that I really wish they kept in the final cut was between Quaritch and Selfridge. Like, after Quaritch gives this whole speech on how they're gonna like fight terror with terror and how they're gonna destroy the Tree of Souls, and all the soldiers are clapping, and it's like, oh, it's just so yeah, it just gets me so hyped for the final battle every time I watch that scene. But like, there's a really tense moment between him and Selfridge, which gives Selfridge, like, all the lead scenes that Selfridge is in, like, he's given a lot more development, and he's like, in the movie, like I didn't like Selfridge as a kid because he was just the cliche like one dimensional, just greedy like corporate slime bag that just only cares about making a profit. But you can tell that Selfridge, he's not as bad of a guy as he's portrayed, because you can tell like when Home Tree is being destroyed, you can see the regret on his, sort of like a sense of regret, like that what have I done look on his face. But this scene that like hits the boiling point, him and Korch just butting heads and be like, no, 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 you have no place to like turn the, all the mining gear into this like militia, like you can't like turn the Valkyrie ship to a bomber. And Korch like grabs him and pins him up and he's just like, you're a long way from Earth, boy. That would have been such a great scene. Just like during the last fight scene, this scene would have given Max a lot more development, the scientist character. And in the middle of the last fight scene, there was a deleted scene where Max and all the other scientists and Avatar drivers in the Avatar program, they hijack a bulldozer, and Max flips off Selfridge and uses the bulldozer just demolish the entire RDA office. I was laughing so hard because Max actually flips off Selfridge. It's like, come on, that is badass. And like it would have made it more understandable as to why the Na'vi, like at the end of the movie after the fight is over, why the Na'vi let Max and all the other avatars stay. And it is confirmed that Norm and Max's respective actors, Joel David Moore and Dilip Rao, I hope I got his name right, are returning for Way of Water. And since them and the other like Avatar scientists were chosen to stay, I am really curious as to how they've adjusted to life on Pandora within the past 10 years, even if their appearances are just brief. Like, I'm really curious, like, because obviously they're humans, they're like significantly shorter than the Na'vi, and they're gonna need their gas masks to go outside of their like whatever bunker it is that they're staying in, and they can't do the Sahelu, the bond of the ponytails. I don't know. I mean, obviously, the film's gonna focus a lot more on Jake and Neytiri and their family and the whole like adventure going to the ocean to meet the Metzakaina people. But I'm just curious to see that regardless. Yeah, there's a lot of really just awesome deleted scenes I wish they finished and put like in a big ass director's cut of the film. Like, there's another scene where Jake kind of takes like the Na'vi equivalent of like an acid trip where he eats like this worm during like a hunting ritual, and he gets a vision of him riding, the Great Lanopteryx, which is where he knows that he's gonna be the next Turok Makto. As well as after the Stern Beast hunt that you see in the extended version of the film, they him and Norm and are all just like they're at a hunters festival, and they get like drunk with Sute and the other hunters, and they're all just like dancing and having a good time. And like Mowat and Etukan, they all get suspicious that like Jake is falling in love with Neytiri. It's like no, like she's gonna be next Sahik, like it's not her path. And also, like, they touch base on this in the extended version, but after the RDA bulldozes the Tree of Voices, they showcase the Na'vi retaliating against the bulldozers, and they set all the equipment on fire, and they kill all the RDA troops. This is what they use to, the RDA uses to justify their attack on Home Tree. It's like, hey, we attacked the Tree of Voices to trigger a response so we can, have an excuse to retaliate and destroy their home and obtain all the unobtainium that the Home Tree is setting on. And when I was preparing this review, I really want to give my 2 cents on this debate that I've seen amongst like, Avatar fans and just like film people in general. Is like, is like Korch, the film's antagonist, the real hero of the movie? Are the RDA like the true good guys of the film? Because I've heard a lot of people be really convinced online that Korch is the real hero while Jake is the real antagonist. Because Korch, he's just doing his job, and the RDA, they're just trying to save the human race by obtaining unobtainium on this planet, on Pandora, so they can, fix the energy crisis back on Earth, while Jake just betrayed the entire human race because he just got a collapse of alien cheeks. I disagree with people who have that general sentiment. I mean, yeah, nothing against like Stephen Lang's performance as Korch. Yeah, Korch is one of my favorite like cinematic villains of all time. He's just so menacingly charismatic, and Stephen Lang just completely nailed performance and just knows how to make someone just look menacing. Like, oh, you see him on screen, you cannot take your eyes off Korch, and he just means business. But I will say this, I think that Korch has and the RDA, they all have understandable motives as to why they're doing what they're doing, why they're colonizing Pandora, why they're trying to extract, its its mineral, because unobtainium is a superconductor, which is how like the Hallelujah Mountains are floating. There's like floating mountains everywhere because of the unobtainium. That's also explained in the extended version. I've seen people online discuss this before, so like I don't take any credit for this, but like think from the perspective of like one of the space marines like working for the RDA on Pandora. Like if you had a family or friends back home on Earth living in just horrible apartments like the one that Jake was living in a stuffed overcrowded city where the air is clean and there's very little resources, what lengths would you go to keep them safe? I think you do whatever it takes. And doing so, that's going to involve, killing some native blue people. And I, for one, do not think the Na'vi are in the wrong for wanting to defend themselves and their way of life and their home. And Jake, again, the extended version makes it more understandable as to why he wants to betray the RDA. Because think about it. He goes from disabled loner grieving the loss of his twin brother, living in this shithole that is Earth in the 22nd century, when he's finally offered a new chance to just get a fresh start on life in a new world where he gets his own alien body where he can walk and run again, and he gets to like meet new people where the air is clean and there's nature and there's greenery, and he falls in love. Yeah, I would, if I were in his position, I would totally take that opportunity. So I would offer, like, I know the film wants us, the filmmakers, James Cameron, the writers and the directors, and, the actors, they want us to think that, the Na'vi and Jake and Norman and Grace, they're the good guys, while the RDA, the Quaritch and Selfridge and Private Pancake are the bad guys. And, while the people online would argue the opposite, like, oh, the RDA is a real good guy, while Jake and the Na'vi are the bad guys. I would argue that there are no heroes or villains in Avatar. Again, this is just my hot take. I think there's just a lot of moral gray area on both sides, because it's a fight that neither can afford to lose. And we see, like, in the remastered version that was just, pulled out from theaters, that, like, I think the remastered version varied, like, depending on what part of the world you're in, but, like, I might be wrong on that. When, like, Selfridge walks up to Jake before, like, he boards the ship to fly back home to Earth, he's like, hey, this isn't over, right? And obviously, Avatar has a lot of, like, anti-colonialism themes. There's a lot of parallels between, like, how Europeans came over to North America to colonize the Native Americans, just like what the RDA is doing, to the Na'vi on Pandora. And I've read online that this movie actually stirred up a lot of controversy amongst Native American communities for reinforcing the whole white savior narrative. Like Jake Sully, he's a white guy, but he has to become a Na'vi to save a Na'vi from the other evil white guys. But with that being said, this is one thing I really hope it touch base on in the sequels, because we know that Quaritch and Private Pancake are coming back as recoms and Way of Water. They're getting their own avatar bodies to, exact their revenge on the Omotakaya people. Keeping the films, the whole, like, franchise anti-colonialism themes in mind, you gotta remember that, like, the Na'vi, they're obviously heavily inspired off, like, Native Americans and various, like, indigenous tribes peoples from around the world. But it's important to remember, like, when studying history, like, when Europeans showed up to continents like Africa, North America, South America, and Australia and the Pacific regions to colonize the native tribes people in that area, people from those respective regions were already fighting each other constantly since, like, the dawn of humanity. Like, Native Americans fought each other all the time. And just like how in Africa, like, there were Africans who captured other Africans and sold them as slaves to Europeans. It's divide and conquer. We see that all the time happening throughout history all around the world. So what if this is a speculation I have, what if the RDA, like, what if, Quaritch and his Dreamcom body meets another tribe of Na'vi that hates the Omotakaya people with a burning passion, says, hey, why don't you help us fight Jake and Neytiri? And the other tribes, like, not a problem. Now they have, like, Na'vi allies to fight other Na'vi. I really hope that something like that happens, because after the Great Leonopteryx chases Jake and Neytiri when they're flying their Ekrons, Neytiri points out the Taruk skeleton in home tree and explains that her great-great-grandfather was Torok Makto. It's only happened 5 times since the time of the first songs, and she says like, "Oh, he brought the clans together in time of great sorrow," which implies that the Na'vi used to. Like, I'm speculating this implies that there used to be like Na'vi on Na'vi conflict on Pandora long before the humans showed up to like colonize it for its minerals, and I speculate that just like how Jake, became the sixth Turok Makto to unite all the 15 clans against the RDA in the Battle of Pandora at the end of the movie. What if all of the previous 5 Turok Maktos before him, tamed Great Leonopteryx during like times of like great tribal conflict to bring peace and put all the other tribes in check? The last 30 minutes of Avatar, the battle for Pandora, is to this day like one of my favorite like action scenes, one of my favorite final battles of all time. Dare I say it, I know Endgame dethroned Avatar at the box office. As much as I adore, the portal scene in Endgame, it will not hold a candle to Jake leading Neytiri and Sute and all the clans have assembled to fight back against the RDA after everything they've done. The ambush from the Hallelujah Mountains onto the Scorpion helicopters and like the frontal charge to the horses with like Norm leading with his machine gun, just charging at the amp suits and the soldiers, and like Trudy coming around and like sacrificing herself to like the dragon ship, and just like it's just glorious. Like directing a good action scene is like riding a bicycle for James Cameron. Like this is the cinematography, the score, the editing, the sound effects, the drama. Like you see people just dropping, and like when you think that the Na'vi are like about to lose because the RDA, they gain the upper hand with their superior technology, and you see them all running away, and you see Sute being shot down, and you see Norm dying in his avatar body. Norm's human body is safe, but his avatar is no more, and Trudy blowing up. You think all is gone, but then the hammerheads charge out of the bushes, and he stomps on Private Pancake, and they just obliterate the entire like squad, them and the Stern Beasts if you're watching the extended version, and then the Ecrons come down from the skies and rain havoc on the helicopters, and the Viper Wolves charge out of the bushes to peck off the rest of the troops, and the Thantor comes with the offer, the offer itself to Neytiri as a ride, because Neytiri lost her Econ. Just, oh my goodness. That is, again, one of the most satisfying moments in any like action movie that I've seen, because it's just so satisfying watching nature take back what's rightfully hers from people who are trying to destroy her world. And like Neytiri screams, "I once heard you!" It's like, just goosebumps. I know people kind of like to crap on Avatar for having a lot of Deus Ex Machina moments like that, when something unexpected happens. But ultimately, like, I just have the stupidest grin every time I watch it. No matter how many times I rewatch it, it will always put a smile on my face. Like, I remember like seeing that moment in theaters when I was a kid, and I was cheering. And of course, this is why Quaritch is my favorite film villains. Even after both of the bomber ships are destroyed, their plan to like destroy the Tree of Souls fails, he does not back down from Jake, and he grabs his amp suit, he's on the ground, and he sees where their bunker is located. Neytiri tries to stop him with the Thantor, but then he kills the Thantor, and then the final fight ensues between him and Jake, and he's just putting up, and Quaritch just put up one hell of a fight. But ultimately, this is why I think his death is poetic, is because we're introduced to Quaritch at the start of the film, warning, the RDA troops and the scientists about the Na'vi and their arrows, and he dies, or he temporarily dies, because he's gonna be brought back to life as a recom in the sequels to Neytiri, a Na'vi, and her arrows. It kind of just brought everything full circle. I just thought that was very fitting. Quaritch tries to destroy, the bunker that like Jake's human body is resting in, and Neytiri has to like save him, and like it's the first time we see Neytiri see Jake in his human forms at the end of the movie, and they still say like, "Oh, I see you," to each other before it like cuts to Jake mercy killing Sute, or back to the humans being exiled from Pandora. I'm expecting plenty more like just truly amazingly like well executed fight scenes to come with this franchise. Yeah, this is usually the part of my movie reviews where I give the film I'm reviewing in question like it's a grading on a scale of 0 to 10, but like A few weeks ago on a Would You Rather Wednesday poll that I made, I actually asked you guys if you want me to like change my rating scale, because this is an idea I've been having for a while now, where instead of the 0 to 10 scale that I've been doing way back in 2005, I've been doing ever since I started reviewing movies back in 2015, I would change it to a 0 to 9 scale. And the more I think about doing so, the more I like it. Again, very similar to the 0 to 10 scale, just 0 to 9. And I'll explain more, like, the changes I've made to my rating scale, like, in a future video I plan on making this week. So Avatar, like, guys, is this really a shocker? It gets a 9 out of 9 stars. It's one of my all-time favorite films. It is, like, it's a filmtastic masterpiece to every degree. And again, I don't care, like, how much backlash it's received over years. It's like, I generally wouldn't be the person I am today without it. And I've been very excited making this review for a while now. I have some editing to do. If you made it to the end of this review, please, thank you so much. And again, this is like the past 9 years of making YouTube videos truly have been like the best 9 years of my life. Through all the highs, through all the lows. It's like, 9 years ago, it's like I was a freshman in high school being all excited about his first YouTube video. And here I am now, like a 24-year-old college grad, pursuing his dreams. The rest of this year is my plans are still a little bit up in the air as like whether I'll be moving again soon or not, because I just gotta like see where the job market takes me at this point now that my internship is over. But yeah, it's just crazy to think about everything that's happened in the past 9 years, going through high school and graduating from high school, going through college for 4.5 years, and like all the stuff I had to go through to get the degree, and like all the highs and lows and roller coasters, and like the past like 10 months of being like done with college. It's like, geez, it doesn't feel like it's been 10 months since I graduated from CSU. It's like I can't tell if it's gone by really slow or really fast. But yeah, that's all bunch of ramblings to do for another video. Just again, thank you so much for watching this video. That means the world to me. And if you liked it as much as I enjoyed making it, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, like, you guys have a nice night and stay beastly.